General Hospital will reveal Josslyn was gradually sinking deeper into the life of an operative, drawn into the intricate web of WSB's power struggles and deception. What had initially been an exciting yet daunting challenge quickly transformed into a relentless battle for survival. She no longer hesitated in the face of danger. Instead, she adapted, learning to read between the lines of every mission, every command, and every hidden agenda. Each encounter with enemies, each moment spent under scrutiny, forced her to sharpen her instincts and push her limits beyond what she once thought possible. The girl who once believed in clear lines between right and wrong was now operating in a world where morality was a shifting landscape, dictated by those who held the power. Vaughn had been assigned as her trainer, and at first, he had seen her as little more than an inexperienced recruit, eager, idealistic, and perhaps a little reckless. He had been certain that she wouldn't last long in this world, that the brutal realities of WSB operations would break her resolve. But Josslyn defied every expectation. She was not just intelligent, she was tactical, quick-witted, and unrelenting. Her mind worked in ways that Vaughn hadn't anticipated, analyzing, adapting, and countering every move he made with an intensity that forced him to take her seriously. Their training sessions were grueling, pushing Josslyn to her physical and mental limits. Vaughn did not hold back, determined to break her down if it meant preparing her for the harsh reality of their line of work. Yet, with every session, an unspoken tension grew between them. What had started as mere combat training became something more, a battle of wills, a clash of two strong forces neither could fully control. Vaughn was a man who kept his emotions buried deep beneath a hardened exterior, unwilling to let personal feelings interfere with his duty. Yet, he couldn't deny that Josslyn intrigued him. There was a fire in her. One that refused to be extinguished, no matter how much he tried to break her down. She challenged him, forced him to reevaluate his expectations, and with each sparring match, each exchange of blows, the lines between mentor and student blurred. Their fights were no longer just about skill, they were tests of endurance, of dominance, of something unspoken simmering beneath the surface. Josslyn was relentless, matching him strike for strike, refusing to yield even when he pushed her past exhaustion. And Vaughn, who had always prided himself on remaining detached, found himself drawn into the way she moved, the way she anticipated his attacks, the way she refused to be anything less than his equal. Each encounter between them was charged, the air thick with the kind of tension that neither of them wanted to acknowledge. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper, something raw and electric that neither could fully understand yet. Josslyn was no longer the naive girl who had once stepped into WSB's world with nothing but determination. She was becoming something else, someone more dangerous, someone more powerful. And Vaughn, despite himself, could feel it. He knew that whatever was happening between them would eventually come to a head. The only question was whether it would make them stronger, or destroy them both. Josslyn, despite the lingering ache in her heart for Dex, found herself drawn to Vaughn in a way she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't love, at least, not the kind she had known before. It wasn't the safety and devotion she had once felt with Dex. No, this was something else entirely. Vaughn represented danger, a thrilling unpredictability that sent a shiver down her spine. There was something forbidden in the way he looked at her, something that felt like crossing a line she had never even considered before. It was reckless. It was intoxicating. And yet, she couldn't pull away. Every time she was near him, the air felt charged, thick with an unspoken energy that neither of them dared to acknowledge. His presence made her feel things she wasn't ready to admit, things she wasn't sure she wanted to admit. She had always believed she had a type, that she knew what she wanted, but Vaughn shattered all those illusions. He wasn't the kind of man she should be interested in. He was dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with the job, and yet, that danger was exactly what made him so irresistible. But before she could fully unravel what Vaughn meant to her, before she could even begin to process the tangled emotions clawing at her from the inside, her world was shattered by a devastating truth. She had been played. For so long, she had believed that taking down Cyrus had been an act of justice. That it had been necessary, that she had done the right thing. Brennan had convinced her that Cyrus was a threat to everything she stood for, that eliminating him was the only way to protect the greater good. And she had believed him. She had trusted him. But it was all a lie. Brennan had never cared about justice. He had never cared about making the world a better place. She had merely been a pawn in his twisted game, a weapon to be wielded and discarded when convenient. He had manipulated her, used her idealism and thirst for righteousness against her, pushing her into a corner where she had no choice but to do his bidding. And now that she had served her purpose, she realized with sickening clarity that she was expendable. Josslyn felt the betrayal sink into her bones like ice. The rage that followed was swift, white-hot, and all-consuming. She had killed for Brennan. She had done things she never thought she was capable of, all because she had believed in his cause. And now, she saw the truth, she had been nothing more than a tool in his grand design. Her first instinct was to run, to get as far away from Brennan and the WSB as possible. But she wasn't naive enough to think it would be that easy. Brennan was not the kind of man who let people walk away. He would never allow her to leave on her own terms. If she tried, he would come for her. He would hunt her down, erase her from existence as easily as he had deceived her. No, running wasn't an option. She had only one choice left. If she wanted to escape, she would have to destroy Brennan first. Josslyn understood that the only way to break free from Brennan's control was to bring him down. But that was easier said than done. Brennan was not just a man, he was an institution, a force that had embedded itself deep within the WSB, twisting the agency into his personal empire. To take him down, she would need leverage, inside knowledge, and someone who had both access and influence. Someone who could get close to Brennan without raising suspicion. Someone skilled, calculating, and ruthless enough to take risks. And there was only one person who fit that description. Vaughn. Josslyn had studied him carefully, observing his every move since she first stepped into the WSB's world. He wasn't like the others. He wasn't blindly loyal to Brennan, nor was he a mindless soldier carrying out orders without question. Vaughn was different, shrewd, strategic, and above all, someone who operated on his own terms. He played by the rules only when they suited him. That made him dangerous, but it also made him valuable. If she could get Vaughn on her side, if she could make him see that Brennan wasn't worth his loyalty, then she might have a real shot at bringing the man down. But Vaughn was no fool. He wasn't someone who could be easily manipulated, and Josslyn knew it. If she wanted to win him over, she couldn't just tell him the truth, she had to make him feel it. She had to plant the seed of doubt, water it carefully, and watch as it took root. And to do that, she would have to get closer to him than ever before. It was a dangerous game, one that required her to walk the thin line between deception and seduction. Vaughn wasn't just any operative, he was perceptive, always reading between the lines, always searching for ulterior motives. If she pushed too hard, he would see through her. If she played it too safe, he wouldn't take the bait. She needed to strike the perfect balance, to make it seem as though her interest in him was natural, inevitable, something that neither of them could fight. So, Josslyn made her first move. She started spending more time with Vaughn, seeking him out under the pretense of training, strategy discussions, or simply needing guidance. She let moments of tension linger just a little too long, allowed the occasional touch, seemingly accidental, but deliberate in its execution. She spoke to him in a way that was both teasing and challenging, just enough to pique his curiosity. She knew Vaughn felt it too. The energy between them had always been there, simmering beneath the surface, unspoken but undeniable. Now, she simply had to amplify it, to let it build until he could no longer ignore it. At first, he was wary, his usual guarded nature keeping him from lowering his defenses. But Josslyn was patient. She didn't rush, didn't push too hard. She let him come to her, let him start questioning his own instincts. She dropped subtle comments about Brennan, nothing too obvious, nothing that would alarm him, just enough to make him start thinking. And slowly, it began to work. She could see it in the way Vaughn looked at her, the way his sharp eyes lingered just a second longer than before. She could hear it in his voice, in the hesitation that wasn't there before when Brennan's name was mentioned. She was getting to him. But she also knew that this was only the beginning. If she wanted to truly turn Vaughn against Brennan, she would have to take things even further. And she was willing to do whatever it took. That night, Josslyn made her move with unwavering determination. This was not a moment for hesitation or second-guessing. She had spent too much time trapped under Brennan's control, manipulated into believing she had a choice when, in reality, she had been nothing more than a pawn in his elaborate game. Now, she was ready to seize control, to turn the tables before he could tighten his grip on her any further. There was no other option, either she fought back, or she would be swallowed whole by the world Brennan had created. She sought Vaughn out deliberately, choosing a moment when he was alone, away from the watchful eyes of those who remained loyal to Brennan. The dimly lit room carried a heavy silence, an unspoken tension that seemed to settle between them the moment she stepped inside. Vaughn, always perceptive, sensed her presence immediately, but he did not react, did not acknowledge her intentions outright. He was a man who measured every situation carefully, a man who refused to be played. But Josslyn had been studying him, analyzing his patterns, his reactions, the subtle tells that revealed more than words ever could. She knew that he was not blind to Brennan's flaws. She knew that, somewhere deep inside, he harbored doubts, even if he had never spoken them aloud. And doubts, once planted, had a way of taking root. With slow, calculated steps, she closed the distance between them, no longer the uncertain recruit she had once been, but a woman with a purpose. Every movement, every breath was intentional, designed to disrupt his usual state of control, to make him feel something beyond the rigid discipline he was so accustomed to. She let the silence stretch, forcing him to acknowledge the weight of her presence before she took the next step. In that moment, she painted a vision before him, one where Brennan was no longer the one in control, where his influence over WSB had crumbled under the weight of his own corruption. In his place stood someone else, someone stronger, someone more capable of wielding true power. She let that possibility linger, seeping into Vaughn's mind like a whispered temptation. He was too intelligent not to recognize the implications, too strategic not to understand that she was offering him something far greater than loyalty to a crumbling regime. She didn't need to speak in absolutes. She knew Vaughn would never accept an obvious ploy. Instead, she let the suggestion settle in the air, letting him draw his own conclusions. His silence was not rejection, it was calculation, the kind that came with weighing risks and rewards, with recognizing that the foundation he had built his allegiance upon was already beginning to crack. She made sure to leave him with a choice, one that wasn't forced, one that he would believe was his to make. Yet, deep down, she knew the decision had already been set in motion. The moment doubt entered his mind, the moment he allowed himself to consider the alternative, Brennan had already begun to lose his grip on him. She did not linger to see his immediate reaction. That was not how a game like this was played. Instead, she walked away, confident that the storm she had set into motion would only continue to build. Vaughn was no fool, he would see the truth eventually. And when he did, he would have no choice but to act. Josslyn had made her move. Now, it was only a matter of time before Vaughn made his. At first, Vaughn remained skeptical, his expression unreadable, his body language rigid with the discipline he had perfected over years of serving the WSB. He was not a man easily swayed, not someone who acted on impulse or allowed himself to be drawn into reckless conspiracies. But beneath the cold exterior, behind the sharp scrutiny of his gaze, there was a flicker, an almost imperceptible shift, a glimmer of calculation. He was listening. He was considering. Josslyn had expected resistance. She had anticipated his initial doubt, the instinctive distrust that came with a lifetime of surviving in a world where betrayal lurked in every shadow. But she had also studied Vaughn long enough to know that he was not a blindly loyal follower. He was ambitious. He was strategic. And above all, he was a man who understood the value of power. What she was offering him was not just rebellion against Brennan, it was an opportunity, a chance to rise above the position he had been confined to for too long. That realization was beginning to take hold, slowly threading its way into his mind. She could see it in the way his stance shifted, the way his fingers curled slightly as if grasping at an idea he wasn't ready to voice. This wasn't just a dangerous proposition, it was the opening to something far greater. But beneath the calculations, beneath the quiet consideration of her words, there was something else, a tension neither of them could fully ignore. It had been simmering for weeks, ever since she had stepped into this world and into his path. Vaughn had tried to resist it, had convinced himself that Josslyn was just another operative, another piece in the larger game. But now, standing in the charged silence between them, he could no longer deny that he was drawn to her in ways he hadn't expected. Josslyn knew what she had done. She had planted the seed of doubt, and once doubt existed, it was only a matter of time before it grew into something unstoppable. Vaughn was not a man who made hasty decisions, but she knew he was already thinking ahead, already weighing the risks, already considering what it would mean to shift his allegiance. But she also knew the stakes. If he chose to side with her, if he decided to move against Brennan, there would be no turning back. And if this plan failed, if Brennan even suspected her betrayal before she was ready to strike, there would be no mercy. He would hunt her down, eliminate her without hesitation, and Vaughn would be forced to choose whether to save himself or go down with her. This was no longer just about survival. It was about power. It was about the delicate balance of control that was about to tip in a direction neither of them could fully predict. And at the center of it all was something even more dangerous, an unspoken connection that neither Josslyn nor Vaughn had intended, something raw and unpredictable that could either strengthen their alliance or destroy them both. For now, all she could do was wait. Wait for Vaughn to make his move. Wait for the moment when this game of deception would reach its breaking point. And when it did, there would be no room for hesitation.